Hello dear comrades. It is a great privilege for me to introduce you my first English presentation, which is based on video. So, at first we are going to discuss about the conflicts in Africa in 20th century. About the roots of their conflicts, we are not going to discuss about the Arabian conflicts, because they were referred with Middle East. The British cut the largest piece of African cake from Cairo to Cape Town, in addition to Nigeria and a few West African regions. It was also that British Empire, at 1894, imposed an arbitrary boundary around many diverse ethnic groups and kingdoms that would make up Uganda. The southern Bantu people were given economic, political and educational advantage. The northern ethnic groups, in particular Anachali and Alangi, were the main recruits for the police positions. By exploiting linguistic, ethnic and cultural differences between the peoples in North and South, Britain's dividing rule policies created tension between them. It helped to maintain British rule. The French took an east-west slice of the continent as well as Madagascar. The Belgians took Rwanda, Burundi, and the Congo, and what just Congo called the vilest scramble for loot that ever distraught the history of human conscience. Slave labor took over 5 million lives. In Rwanda, Belgians trenched the idea of the Hutus as a workforce, and the Tutsis as extenders of Belgian rule. The politicization of these two cultures would profoundly contribute to the genocide at 1994. In Sudan, the British ruled Arabs on the north and the blacks on the south, as separate colonies, only to combine the areas for independence in 1998. The result has been the endless civil war. Therefore, the massacres being a latest tragedy. The Portuguese took Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau well into the 1970s. The Italians took Libya, Eritrea and Somalia. The Germans added Cameroon and Tanzania, and committed the first genocide in 20th century against the Huero people. Major powers such as the USA, the Soviet Union and others supported various regimes and dictatorships. Some possibly promising leaders in the early days of the independence movements throughout the Third World were overthrown. There was disregard from the major powers as to how this would affect the people of these countries. $1.5 billion worth of weapons to Africa has come from the US alone, according to a report from the World Policy Institute, while Europe, for example, was able to exploit Africa's resources to help.
Наше оружие оказалось не столь эффективным, как
our weapons turned out to be less effective than we calculated.
хотя бы, так сказать, возместить.
We felt that it was our duty to compensate, to supply more arms.
Поставить оружие и,
and looking at the wider context, not to let the West win.
Дать выигрыша Западу.
Thus, the proliferation of small arms in the region, when the Cold War ended, has helped fuel many conflicts.
Africa has become an attractive and profitable dumping ground for nations and arm manufacturers eager to get rid of weapon stocks made superfluous by the end of the Cold War or by technological developments.
What is neocolonialism? Let's take Ethiopia. It has 120 million hectares of land, 80 million people, a favorable political environment, excellent climatic conditions for farming, and sufficient water. What more could anyone want? Recently, this area has been making big money, but not for the Ethiopians. Asian investors are sweeping through Africa to secure land, harvests, and revenues for themselves. Let's take this Indian, for instance. He leased over 400,000 hectares from the government, an area almost as large as Dubai, to grow this, this, and this. He negotiates with the government, suppliers, and customers. In Ethiopia, the conditions are ideal: low lease prices and cheap labor. The Africans lack the necessary know-how, which means the Indians are cultivating the land in Ethiopia using American tractors. Here, all the land belongs to the state. Over the next few years, the government plans to permanently lease 3 million hectares of land to investors, and that in a country that prides itself on having never been colonized. It is ironic that foreign investors are making profits growing foodstuffs in a country where every second person is considered undernourished. But who will benefit the most from these natural resources? The investors? Or will it bring wealth and knowledge to the Ethiopian people? The potential for development is enormous, but so are the risks. The new race for the fertile land of this continent is already in full swing.